The Front Row Show does not reflect the views of Utah State Athletics, or its affiliates.
Excuse me, what the hell's going on out here?
I wish I could say something that was classy and inspirational, but that just wouldn't be our style.
Stick this in your trophy.
The Aggies come up short in the season opener against Utah and now look forward to a bounce-back performance in the Mountain West Conference opener against Air Force. This week on The Front Row Show. What is up, Aggie fans? Welcome again to the Front Row Show. As always, we are your hosts. I'm Matt Sonnenberg.
I'm Lance Rasmussen.
And I'm Jeff Browning. Wherever you are listening, make sure to follow us on Twitter at USU Front Row. Check out the Facebook page, YouTube channel. Also, the website, guys. There was some good stuff up there for the Utah game. Shout out to Kyle Haywood, Blake Hadfield. They did a great job getting Aggie Nation prepared
and Trevor Weller.
And what about Trevor Weller?
There we got to throw out a recipe.
Tailgating recipe.
We need to know if anyone actually tried that recipe. That needs to happen.
And if you did, why didn't you share any with me? Because
that was rude.
It sounded delicious.
We all felt that this game at the beginning of the year was a toss-up, and that it would come down to the wire. It did come down to the wire. Yep. Unfortunately, Utah State comes up short. This is actually the first time we've had to talk about a football loss on the Front Row Show. Yeah. So let's get it out of the way. Utah comes out hot to start off, and the Aggies, I feel I'm quite pleased that they were able to respond to Utah's hot start.
Well, the fact is we were able to pull the game in, and we had a 9-point lead. I mean, gone are the days where we watch a team fold. Gone are the days where we get down by 10, 15 points, and we just go, well, there's no chance we're making it back in this again. It comes back to the fact that we really can be competitive in every single game we play, not only this season, but I see in the near future. We're going to be competitive. I mean, obviously the result in this one wasn't exactly what we would have wanted, but it speaks well that we were able to do what we did.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about how Utah had so much to prove, that last season was not representative of where they are as a program. So obviously they came out hot, and for the Aggies, you want to do that too, but some things don't always go in your favor. The Ute passing game was working well, and they got a few big plays that led to touchdowns. The Aggies bounced back, though, and that speaks a lot to where we're at as a program, like you said. And the game got really good for a while, and the thing that is just so difficult to swallow is that in the end, like it so often has been the case the last 2 years, came down to special teams. Between the missed PAT, which could have changed kind of the outlook of the game later, at least made it more interesting, and then the onside kick, which Utah with that
ballsy
touchdown,
and kudos to the coaching staff on that for them.
And you know what?
Huge.
There's a handful of people. I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but everyone that was sitting around me will tell you. I called it. I said they got to watch the onside kick here because Whittingham has the kind of stones to do something like that, and he'll bust it out. And if they get it, all the momentum. They got back some of the momentum. Yep. Once they got that, they had all the momentum. And I even talked to Eric Schultz, and he said he called it too. Standing on the sideline, he just had a gut feeling that it was coming, and it came and cost us.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about before that we felt that the Utah State secondary had a lot to prove, particularly in the safety position where you have a new starter and a guy who's really been out of football for a year in Maurice Alexander. And then the other question we had was in the coaching staff, and I think you saw Utah exploit those two areas because Kyle Whittingham and his staff had a great game plan against Utah State. They went right for where they thought the weakness was going to be in the center of the defense, in the safeties, and they exploited that big time. And that really was the big factor in the game.
When I think of Matt Wells came out and actually talked about it a bit today, that it was just a couple times that they caught our safeties looking in the wrong direction or something like that, and all it takes is one or two plays. As the positive side, though, I think we saw a lot of really cool game planning as far as the run goes. And I think that, honestly, we were probably expecting a little bit more run out of Utah than they ended up showing up because Wilson wasn't a proven passer. And once again, I mean, in the preview episode, I talked about how he was going to be dangerous by the end of this year. He's going to be dangerous now.
Yeah,
I mean,
he was good.
The kid stood up in the pocket, ended up 305 yards, something like that, throwing through the air.
Too many.
And it just the fact is between that and their offensive line, they had a lot more pass than I think we were expecting out of them. And as far as Utah exploiting a lot of our weaknesses, yeah, they had a good game plan, and they were willing to look and see what we were giving them, and they answered. And once again, our shout out to them. They definitely planned for the game well, and they got a lot of things put across, and they ended up walking out with a victory.
I mean, fortunately, I feel for Utah State fans going forward, Chucky Keaton, guys, is a god. Unbelievable performance by him. Any questions that anyone had that he's not only the best quarterback in the state, and Wilson was great, he really was, but Chucky Keaton is one of the best quarterbacks anywhere. He put on a phenomenal performance, and any questions about him being able to play against top defenses has been answered.
Sometimes he doesn't even need two shoes to make big plays.
Not at all.
But, I mean, like you said about Utah kind of seeing a weakness, I feel it's something we talked about kind of at length.
We did talk about it.
With the safeties in particular, because we know Brian Sweet is a very good run-stuffing safety. I mean, ask Monty Ball. I know I've said that a ton of times now. And we'd seen Mo Alexander in camp be great at getting into the play on running plays. We had this concern about their ability to cover the pass. Not so much because we doubted their ability, just that we hadn't really seen it put to the test yet.
Yeah.
And Utah came out and completely put it to the test, both getting guys open over the middle and sending guys deep. And I think, ideally you want to hope that moving forward, this will be the learning experience where now they've gotten their feet wet and they understand what adjustments they need to make. And, the fortunate thing is this coming week, Air Force isn't going to throw the ball up top a whole lot. Yep. And Weber State the next week, you got to like your chances for containing things and being able to get a little more experience before the schedule really hits the meaty part.
Well, Matt, you've talked about this, that where are we going to face in our schedule a team that has a better combination of quarterback, tight end, and wide receivers than Utah?
Yeah.
I don't think there is one. I mean, San Jose State is probably the next closest because USC definitely doesn't have the quarterback. They have the receivers. Yep. So this was really the game where you kind of don't know what you have yet. And now the coaching staff, we can really see how good of a coach Todd Orlando is. He can make those adjustments for the next games going forward. Let's talk just briefly about the offense. Question marks were raised about the wide receivers, and those questions are no more, I feel. Travis Van Leeuwen, Joe Natson, they were awesome.
I'll just come right out and say it because I feel I was maybe as skeptical as anyone. I was not willing to give these guys a lot of credit, especially after the spring game last year and through camp. Well, I did talk about how they'd improved. I wrote that post-training camp grades, and I think I graded them a C-. Man, did they shut me up, and I'm happy for them. I mean, they were absolutely terrific as a unit. We saw Travis Van Leeuwen had pretty much the game of his career with 5 catches for 170 yards. Awesome. He did it all. He did it in the short game. He went over the middle. He had a deep pass that he caught. Brandon Swindle in the red zone. He had 2 touchdowns, kind of being the new Matt Austin, catching that ball in the fade. I'd like to see him be able to go up more. I want to see what that's going to do against maybe some better cornerbacks that we'll see later this year. But, I mean, a very encouraging start. And like we talked about with a lot of aspects, guys will get better from here. And then JoJo Natson, pretty much Wes Welker in there. If you need a quick 5-yard in to get a first down, he's there. And he's going to catch it. He's got very good hands. He's very shifty. And that helps him get open. I think it was just an all-around very, very solid performance by the receiving core.
One of the points that I've loved about this is Chucky Keaton ended up being 31 for 40, and there were at least 4 or 5 balls that he threw away.
Yeah.
Just gone, which means that's maybe 4 balls that got dropped by receivers or didn't make it to where the receiver needed to be catching it the entire game. That's 31, basically 31 of 35 passes. That shows where our receivers' hands are at. That was one of the huge concerns is, we knew we knew a lot of things about them athletically, but they're bringing balls in, and they were balls through contact. It was, you were looking at, Travis Reynolds had a ball that he caught and got hit. Van Leeuwen had some. Natson had some. Swindle at the same point. All of them were bringing balls in through contact, which I think was huge.
I can think of 2 plays off the top of my head where, there was one, Nate Orchard was coming around the end and just timed his jump perfectly and batted down a ball.
Yeah.
And then another in the end zone where Trevor Riley deflected a pass that was going for DJ Tilavea in the end zone. So, right there you have the Utes making a few good plays. But like you said with Chucky throwing the ball away, while there are times that maybe if a quarterback sees something and takes a risk on throwing a deep ball, that it might work out. But there's also a lot of times where that could turn into a turnover. And if Chucky's going to opt for the throwaway first,
give it to me every time.
We're going to see fewer turnovers. Maybe there will be times where we miss out on a possible big play, but I think
safety first.
Safety first, and it takes some recognition and real discipline for a quarterback to do that. And also, if your offense is going to be constantly producing, if we're good enough to deliver on 3rd and 10 because we threw it away on 2nd and 10, that's fine. It's just a matter of if the offense can do it, and I think Chucky Keaton really showed that he can do it.
I mean, 487 yards total offense, which is actually quite a bit more than we put up against Utah last year in the victory. So you have to be excited that this offense is going to be able to produce and is going to be able to score some points. I'm encouraged by what the offense did. When you look at it, what does this game mean for the rest of the year for Utah State?
I think it means we know what we have to get better at. I think Utah, they gave me plenty to be concerned about. And maybe I've been around USU football too long to ever feel too comfortable. But I mean,
just can't quite shake that yet.
But I'd rather be a skeptic and be prepared for these. I don't know. I feel they showed us where we need to improve. I think we also learned some very good things. We learned that our wide receivers are capable of stepping up, and they might face tougher pass coverage later on in the year. Probably will, actually. But, I mean, all around, you also got to keep in mind Chucky Keaton may not face as tough of pressure in the pocket when we're facing those other teams, because Utah's D-line and linebackers were very, very good. Yeah. They were, I mean, we knew their D-line, especially we picked them having the edge last week in the battle of D-lines, and they were as good as advertised, maybe even better. Their linebackers were very good, and they got pressure on Chucky, and he didn't have a lot of time. But if you get against a team that isn't getting that pressure, which you got to like our chances with a O-line of 5 returning starters, we're going to have more time for the plays to develop, guys to get open, and Chucky Keaton showed he can make those throws.
And I think it's one of the big things. There are people out there who want to look at a loss and say, obviously there's nothing you can ever take away. I'm tired of these moral victory type situations. And I look and go, yeah, it's a difference when the only victory you have is a moral victory for the entire season. But the fact is we answered a lot of questions with a yes, no, or needs improvement type thing. Are our receivers going to be a problem? It doesn't look like it. We were concerned about our secondary with new personnel coming in. That looks like something we need to work on. We were concerned about our D-line without a couple people there. That looks like something we can put some time and effort into. We had the Connor Williams injury that happened, which obviously shook things up a bit. I don't think we're too concerned about running backs. I know we didn't see a lot of the people that we thought we might actually have some play time in it. At the same point, Joey DiMartino had a couple really good runs, and Joe Hill's over 4 yards a carry for the game, which is great. And I think there's a lot of takeaways we can look into this and go, honestly, you can go down the list of questions that we had to start the season off and even go back into some of the stuff we've talked about on the podcast before. We've answered every single one of those with what exactly needs to happen from here on out. So I think despite the loss, I think it is a great start to really start our team off knowing exactly what we need to do to improve.
What this game means to me is that you're still a really good football team. If ever there was a team that had motivation, had the ability to just blow Utah State out of the water and step on their necks, a la Reggie Theus style, this was it. I mean, I think Utah had all the motivation in the world to just put Utah State in the sack, and they didn't do it. This team showed the grit, showed the experience, the maturity to get down 14-0. You were there, Matt. I don't know how loud it was, but it appeared to be a pretty rocking at that point.
So this was, I believe, my third Utah State and Utah game at Rice Eccles, and I've been there for a few other games here and there. It wasn't as loud as I remember
shocking.
it. I mean, it was still a good crowd. Their crowd was awesome. Their whole Stripe the Stadium thing they did looked really good. And the Ute fans all day out there were as cool as can be to us both before and after the game. But I was a little surprised that the volume, I think the Muss has lost a step. They got to whip that generation into shape. It's like they're having the same problems our basketball crowd's having.
Anyway, I mean, my point with that is that this is still a really good football team. And I think both teams are better than the opposing fan base thought they were. I think Utah State fans had this idea that Utah is now on par with like a Colorado, who was really not a good team. And, Utah fans thought Utah State was just a fluke and it was a one-year wonder. I think both fan bases walk away from this game with the utmost respect for each other because Utah State stood toe-to-toe with them in every way.
My feeling is that Utah is, they were about as good as I thought they'd be. There was a few areas where they surprised me. And, with the Aggies, I had high hopes. And now I've got some things to look at and say, all right, well, it's going to be fun to watch this improve.
It's going to be a great team this year. It really is.
And if they do, I mean, if the Aggies plug these small holes that they have, especially given the opportunities they have over the next 2 weeks and then going into USC, I mean, you win at USC, and I would imagine any damage done from a Utah loss is completely undone. Obviously, you can't get back an undefeated season, but really, what was our chances of that anyway?
Well,
maybe in a couple months we can look back and wonder what if, but even still, it's going to be a fun season because this football team's good.
Well, and it's an odd comparison to make, but I actually look at the Clemson-Georgia game this week and say Georgia has lost. That one loss probably means they're not playing in the national championship. That's what our one loss means for us right now, too. It's an out-of-conference game. We got... And to be honest, I mean, a little bit of a different situation. But no one's looking at Georgia right now going, same old Georgia.
Yeah.
Well, flush the rest of their season down the toilet. They're still a good squad. And I think we're in the same boat that we lost a tight game. And the fact is the players have been really open about saying that they've got... Their goal is a Mountain West Conference championship this year. And we're still on track for that. And by the time that we really start rolling through the meat of our conference schedule, I think we're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
That's exactly the point I was going to make, is that a Mountain West title is priority number one, I think. And especially look around the conference at how everyone else did. Not much to be happy for with the Mountain West. So you gotta
San Jose State, I guess.
I mean, we could have a Utah State, San Jose State, the battle of the last surviving WAC brethren in the Mountain West championship game. Who knows? But I mean, the door could be wide open if you plug a few small holes. It's going to be exciting.
The path to the Mountain West championship starts this week, guys. This Saturday, Utah State travels to the Air Force Academy to take on the Falcons, who, just as a personal note, I love their helmets. The Lightning Bolt is just such a good look.
Classic.
It is such a good look.
Lightning Bolt.
It fits. It's just awesome. It's a great logo. Air Force took on Colgate, and insert your toothpaste jokes here, guys.
I mean,
I got nothing.
I'm a Crest guy. Who cares?
Air Force wins 38-13. Only attempted 7 passes, so you look at the weaknesses that Utah exploited.
Only completed 7 passes.
Yeah, only completed 7 passes.
7 of 11.
Okay.
For 72 yards.
11 throws the entire game.
Yeah.
Did run for 409 yards on 64
It's what they do.
rushes.
Yep.
So
that's the option attack.
Thoughts on this game for Utah State?
We know Air Force is going to be tough. We know they're disciplined. They're going to be physical. It's tough to get a really good gauge based on what they did with Colgate, but I mean, it can't be comforting for them if you want to be a tough defensive team, especially for how well our wide receivers and Chucky Keaton did, to have given up even the 13 points they did to Colgate.
Well, I mean, to me, this game is the ultimate elixir for Utah State. You got to get the nasty taste of the Utah game out of your mouth. You got to come out and show that you're really as good as we think this team is, because right now you haven't won a game yet. And so this team needs this game, to kind of just get that nasty taste out of their mouth. The toothpaste style.
Yeah.
There you go.
So there we go. We'll tie that in.
There it goes. No, but my big thing for this is, and we've talked about it almost ad nauseum, but the fact is with the rushing attack, it's going to line up against the speed of our linebacker core and Brian Sweetenmo Alexander coming with who proved themselves well when it came to pass rush and really trying to shut down the run attack.
Yep.
So
yeah.
What are the keys to the game for Utah State?
Toughness. I mean, toughness and stopping the run. I mean, it's convenient that stopping the run is what our defense does best, and that we have these 2 great run-stuffing safeties and this great linebacker core. we just got to do what we know we're capable of doing.
My big key for the game is to get an early lead and to hold on to it. I think that we're not going to see Air Force, and I mean, all credit to them and what they do, but I don't think we'll ever see them pull an onside kick like Utah did, you know? Yeah. And I think that if we can get the game and momentum going early for us, they have a grinded out style offense. I mean, Jake Dowdy talked about it in the press conference today where he says, it's a schedule, 4 yards of play, 4 yards of play. You got to disrupt that. And if we can come out, get some points up early, and then really let our defense come in and shine at what we know they are capable of doing, I think that's our big key right now.
To me, the key to the game is assignments, keeping your assignments and keeping your lanes. Because I mean, that's like we've all said. There's no secret to this game. There's nothing we can talk about that hasn't already been talked about with Air Force. They are a run team. Lee was their top rusher in the Colgate game with 130 yards and 11 carries with 2 touchdowns. They can be explosive if you don't play your assignments. And fortunately, I feel this is a Utah team that when it comes to assignment football is disciplined. Some people may question the word disciplined after all those penalties, but our run stopping has been proven. And this is a game that, I mean, Vegas has opened the line at 10 points for Utah State. So
they actually opened it up at 6.5.
Did they?
And then it got shifted to 10 when money started.
We should feel good about this game, I feel.
I feel pretty good about it. I'm nervous just because there's a lot on the line now. I mean, you lose this one, and then suddenly the doom and gloom
it's a big game.
Is really going to be permeating, which you just don't want to take into your home opener. You don't want that kind of negative vibe, and you don't want that first win of the year coming against an FCS team, because then you're going to have those people downplaying and trying to kill the vibe of what should still be a great season. But I think this team, like I said, they learned a lot about themselves last week. They obviously know what they need to work on this week in practice. This is a very winnable game against a team they should beat, who Vegas thinks they should beat, who we think they should beat, who Air Force's only offensive strength plays into our biggest defensive strength, which is one of the biggest strengths. I think it's one of the best run-stopping defenses in the nation if they play like they're capable. And so I think this should be, will be, and has to be the first Aggie win of this season.
Well, and I think there's a lot of what ifs that can come into this. I think whether or not Connor Williams' foot ends up being good by the weekend could have a pretty big impact on things. At the same point, I think that you're looking at one of the things that impressed me after the Utah game was when you watched our players getting interviewed, man for man, they came out and said, these are the things we're going to be working on. I know what we can do to be able to get better, and it really is all going to depend on what the coaches can do in the next couple days to really try to shore up some of those issues and see what we can do.
I think the other side of it, I mean, we're talking so much about Air Force's rushing attack against our defense. Air Force has got to stop our offense, guys, and I'm not really sure they have the horses to do that. I mean, you can look at Colgate, and but I mean, they did give up 300 yards, 19 first downs. It's Colgate, for heaven's sakes. I just feel like our offense is going to be able to move the ball and to be able to score points on this Air Force defense.
Even last year, Air Force's defense wasn't very good.
No.
And that's why they had a pretty ho-hum season with a 6-7 finish after a bowl game loss. But, I mean, you look down the list, they gave up big points to a lot of schools. I mean, Fresno State, they gave up 48 points to. Granted, they're good offensively, but they rely on passing attack quite a bit, which is where we can also excel. But they also gave up 41 points to Army last season. They gave up, 27 points to Wyoming, who, I mean, talk about a team that really surprised.
Really?
And
well done, Wyoming.
They nearly got it done, and they've got a great quarterback. I remember Steve Schwartzman talking about him on our show. But, I mean, Air Force lost to UNLV last year, gave up 38 points.
Wow.
So 21 points to Idaho State. So this team, they've got a lot to prove defensively, and it is an uphill battle to have to go and prove that against Chucky Keaton and a wide receiver unit that looks like they may be on the verge of a breakout season. Not to mention Joe Hill, who I think we're going to possibly see the most improvement from him from week 1 to week 2, because he had a decent game but not great. He didn't break anything big, and I think if he really recognizes that you've got to accelerate as fast as you can and hit those holes hard and beat their defenders to the places you want to run, things are going to all come together nicely for the Aggies. I think the Aggies win this one.
I think for me, I look back and on the Joe Hill subject, Colorado State last year was really Kerwin Williams' breakout performance of the year. He hadn't really done. I mean, he'd had some good carries in the Utah game. He got benched early in the SUU game, and Joe Hill came out and just kind of ran roughshod through that whole game. But I mean, Kerwin Williams had 2 or 3 games before he really ramped up to where he was supposed to be. I look for a big game out of Joe Hill and our running back core in general out of this next game.
I look for a big game from Chucky Keaton, and I think that's just to be expected. But I think this is a game where you can really see some long passes, and I agree. I expect Utah State to win this one going away because I think this is a team that is highly motivated to get the Utah loss out of their mouth. And, it, like we said, it's the first game in the road to the championship, which is the goal.
For our next topic tonight, we want to bring back a segment that we haven't yet done in Season 2 of the Front Row Show, where we take something that is being talked about, usually from usufans.com and our friends over there. So for today, we're bringing back the hot topic.
Spoken!
This week, there was a post that brought up some interesting points. The first idea was having Nick Vigil start because we've heard a lot about the stud freshman, but then somebody brought up a great point, or at least a great idea
Aggie-licious, I believe it is on the
moving Mo Alexander back to his position where he began his career at USU at outside linebacker, shifting Tay Glover right to free safety, where a lot of people last year thought he was going to be the natural successor. And then having Rashard Stewart, who somehow didn't see hardly any, if any, snaps in the Utah game, moving Rashard Stewart to the cornerback spot vacated by Tay Glover right. So we want to weigh in on this. Jeff, start us off. What are your thoughts on this?
Love it. I think it's a good idea. I think if you saw a weakness with Mo Alexander in coverage, and that can't be denied. I think you want to see him improve, obviously, but Tay Glover right is a coverage specialist, and he's athletic enough, he's big enough to be great not only in coverage but in run support. And we all saw Maurice Alexander at linebacker, and that guy was just a freak when he played there.
He was a beast.
You put players in a position to make plays. Players make plays, players win games. This is a prime example, I think, of doing that, of addressing a weakness that we saw in this opening game and making the correct adjustments. It's a great idea. I'm not saying Maurice Alexander should not be considered at safety. You don't want to scuttle that after just one game. But this is an interesting thought, and I actually really like this idea.
For me, and obviously the odd man out here is Terrell Thompson, who didn't register a statistic in Thursday's game, which is a little bit, concerning to me, because you've got to think Utah knows that we have Zach Vigil, Jake Dowdy, and Kyler Fackrell out there. And if they're planning on running the ball, you think they're going to run away from them. And that should drive a lot of plays Terrell Thompson's direction, but still he didn't. I mean, I'm not saying he was outright terrible and missed a bunch of plays, but because some games the ball just doesn't find you. But you gotta do something out there. I mean, last year, did we ever see a game where Boje Filamoyatu didn't make a play, or where any one of those linebackers didn't register a tackle? No, they were always up there near the top of the stat sheet. And with Mo Alexander, he's a guy that has been in that spot for an entire season before at outside linebacker, whereas Tay Glover right, yeah, I guess he would be relatively new to safety, but it wouldn't be the first time he's played it. I'm pretty sure he played it in junior college. And with that speed and athleticism he has, makes him almost ideal as a pass covering free safety.
And you look at Mo Alexander in the Utah game, he was so effective up near the line of scrimmage.
Right.
I mean, quarterback pressures. I mean, did he have a sack in the game?
He had a sack and a half.
And he was great.
11 total
he was
tackles.
Great up there. He was phenomenal.
And while what's overlooked a little bit is he had 2 pass breakups, but at the same time, there was also some plays where, they just sprung guys over the middle and deep. And I think Tay Glover right could be very good at containing that, especially against, maybe a Fresno State if we were to face them, or San Jose State, especially with their aerial attack. Mm-hmm. And then Rashard Stewart at cornerback was phenomenal all camp. And I think he is absolutely ready to take on that role. But it's really intriguing to me. And, you think, all right, I guess we would be sacrificing a little bit as far as run stopping goes from our safeties, but we have that flexibility. We have Brian Sweet up there, who's already a phenomenal run stuffing strong safety, as well as our defensive line and linebackers, which leads me to think that kind of switch, while it may be a little bit reactionary, especially after just one game where, like we talked about, they might have had the best quarterback, tight end, receiver combo of any team we'll face this year. it's interesting as far as, what we could see. And I don't think that if this does happen, I don't think it will happen for the Air Force game because they're going to be so run-oriented, and Mo Alexander is so good.
This is even just a wrinkle that you could just throw in, for specific games to just put a wrinkle in your defense that opposing teams are not prepared for. I mean, if they're prepared for Mo Alexander at the safety, and then all of a sudden they see him at the outside linebacker position, that's going to throw off their game plan quite a bit.
I think I'm going to play devil's advocate here and go, I would much rather have Mo Alexander sitting at the safety position. And my argument for that is I think you can teach him to fix the problems that came up coverage-wise. The fact is his blitz out of the safety blitzes were strong. His run coverage, he had tackles, he had pass breakups. I think it is not at all anywhere near his talent level or his ability that caused problems. I think it's him playing a position he's unfamiliar with and going against an offense that he hasn't seen before. If you can teach him to get those coverage the coverage taken care of, and then go into that, keep everyone where they're at. Because the other problem is you'd be moving him into the deepest and most talented position on the field right now. I mean, you're going to have to take away play time from one of the linebackers who I don't think that any of the... I mean, obviously Terrell Thompson had some issues with recording stats or something that got missed in this game, but I mean, even behind him with Nick Vigil...
Nick Vigil was awesome.
You had Nick Vigil coming in and doing things. You have... any of the backup linebackers could come in and potentially take room there. I would say that your solution to the problem is getting Mo Alexander with I don't think it'll take much to get him secure in that coverage. Not to say that I don't think the plan would work, but I would feel more comfortable keeping the defenses the way it stands.
I will say this. Matt Wells does not pay us to analyze football, although that would be awesome. But if San Jose is able to exploit that again, because Air Force isn't going to do it. Weber State, he shouldn't even be in there in the second half because Weber State's just going to get steamrolled. If San Jose is able to exploit that weakness again, then you have a problem, and then you need to correct it. That's when that changes.
And the fact is I think that you will see it if it's going to get exploited. You'll see it exploited a couple times in either the Air Force or the Weber State game, and then you can correct it at that point. But I really think that, I mean, once again, first game of the year.
It's true.
It's the first game, and you don't want to be patch, and that's just me. I mean, I'm arguing for the status quo at this point, but yeah,
be that way.
Like I said, it would be a little bit reactionary at this point to just go ahead and make that monumental shift, especially given that Air Force is not going to throw the ball vertically on us much, if at all. And with Weber State, we don't know what to expect, but maybe against Weber State, let's put Glover right at free safety a little bit. Let's test it out against them, see how it feels, see how they react, and maybe at least from there you have a framework of where to go going against teams with a couple really good wide receivers in USC and San Jose State.
And to throw my lot in with you guys, I think Rashard Stewart's a fantastic cornerback. Mo Alexander, I think, is just going to be a train anywhere on the field. And Glover Wright, I don't think there's a position outside line play that he's not capable of playing at this point. So I think it would be an interesting look. I don't think it's a necessary move, and I think there are easier ways to fix some of the things that we saw come up, but it'd be an interesting look. All right, front rowers, this is your chance to talk with us. It's the tweet sheet.
All right, to start off, we have a new tweet sheeter. Excellent. How's this for a name? Stranger Danger. I'm concerned. Hey, this could be shady business right here.
Should we talk to him if he's a stranger?
Yeah, I don't know if we should.
Only if he offers us candy.
But his Twitter handle is True Aggie Fan, so
not a word.
We're okay with him.
I can dig it.
He says, after the Ute game, what are your thoughts on the rest of the season? He's encouraged by it, but they got to improve, but he's excited. Thoughts?
I think we saw a lot of good things from the Aggies in the Utah game. We also saw areas for concern. I am eagerly awaiting the Air Force game now. I feel, you might have a few mistakes here and there. If we have mistakes again in those same areas, then it's a trend. Then it's a real cause for concern. But, I'm still excited for this season. I still think a Mountain West title is very much in the picture, or at least, within reach, obviously. So stay tuned.
I think that we are well within lines for my preseason predictions. So We're right. No, I shouldn't see right where I want us to be, but we are nowhere near in problem territory. I think this weekend will answer a lot of questions.
Tim Hansen says that we need a wide receiver or running back to step up. Chucky is Superman, but he can't win every game on his own. Do you agree with that?
Did Travis Van Leeuwen not step up?
I think man for man, our receiver core really made some noise this game.
Yeah, they stepped up in a big way. As far as the running backs, I can understand a little bit of concern, but at the same time, you look at our games against these big-time, tough defenses. Like last year, did Kerwin Williams rush for that much against Wisconsin?
No.
I'm going to say it was only like 47 yards.
Yeah, it wasn't
he
very
gained
much
on the ground. Granted, he had a long passing touchdown that he caught, but it's going to be tough to run the ball against teams like that, and that's what makes it a tough game. Again, like I said with the rest of the season, stay tuned because, and it was mentioned earlier that Kerwin Williams really didn't break out in a huge way until the Colorado State game last year. So
Yeah.
I think we'll see Joe Hill break out. He will get his. He's talented enough, and just keep an eye for him.
And once he starts getting his, you'll watch other people follow behind him. I think you'll watch DiMartino get some good carries. Hopefully we see some productivity out of some other running backs who will get some play time. So I think, yes, they need to stand up, but I think that we got to see plenty from especially our wide receivers this week to say that they're ready for the task.
Our good friend Dallin at the Herd tweets in. He says, "When was the last time Utah State lost a game by more than a touchdown?"
Fresno State, 2011. They beat us by 10.
Nice.
I'm pretty sure on that, but yeah, because everything else has been close. The bowl game that year, we only lost by 1 point, and Louisiana Tech got us by a touchdown that year.
This is great that when Utah State loses, they don't lose by much. Gone are the days of being blown out and just feeling so inferior to other teams. Our good friend Alex tweets in. He says, after seeing the results of other teams in the Mountain West Conference, what do you guys think the conference road ahead will be like for Utah State?
Got a lot more interesting, I feel.
Very much so.
San Jose State had a shutout win over an FCS team, but from all I understand, Sacramento State's supposed to be a very good FCS team. So that, it speaks well for them. Boise State, man. Who saw that coming?
It is the worst loss they've had in 8 years, since 2005.
Yeah.
Largest margin of loss.
I want to say I saw some stat during that game that said of Boise State's 5 losses, and I believe this is since 2008.
5 losses.
They've only had 5 losses. It was by a combined 11 points.
That's impressive.
They've had close losses when they have lost in those rare occasions, and they came out and just got stomped by what is really kind of a mediocre Pac-12 team. I mean,
we'll see. I mean,
Washington
obviously
better than Utah?
Oh, I don't know.
I think
possibly.
I think they finished 8-5 last
but not
season.
by much. You can't really put them by much.
Yeah.
I always feel with Boise, you give them the benefit of the doubt until they are thoroughly destroyed in conference, which they have not been yet.
Yeah.
And so until then, you kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. I think the big surprise of the conference was Wyoming against Nebraska.
Wyoming and Nebraska was a great game.
Steve Schwartzman talked about Brett Smith being on his bandwagon, and he balled out. I mean, he was great, and they nearly pulled the upset of the Big Ten Cornhuskers.
And it's actually going to be interesting because I think you're looking at the Mountain Division being shored up a little bit more than I think we might have thought, and the West Division maybe not standing up the way we thought.
What about Fresno?
Fresno had a good game against Rutgers, but I mean, it did go to overtime.
They had an all right game against Rutgers. I mean, but they were favored by, I think, 10.5 points in that. And they were
at home. Yep.
And granted, Rutgers is one of those teams that they remind me a little bit of Air Force in a way. Not so much of the discipline, but they're just tough every year, it seems like.
Yeah.
They're a team that knows what they want to do, and you're not going to beat them down emotionally. They're going to stay in every game.
I agree with you, Lance, that I think the road in our division, I think the path is pretty clear where that road goes through. And I think you saw teams in our division, teams like New Mexico, and they played terrible. I mean, they were awful in their game.
You had some bad losses this week in the conference. FCS teams.
I think Utah State fans should be really encouraged, but don't be fans that are overly cocky about things.
Well,
but I think I think we feel good about our position, given what we saw in our game compared to what the rest of the conference did.
The fact is once again, we come back to the fact that there is no one who we look at who is looking dangerous to the point where we have to automatically check ourselves off at a loss or say that we shouldn't be able to go and compete.
Fair.
I mean,
True.
San Jose State, fortunate enough, they're not in our division, so even if we do play them this year, we don't need to worry about them messing up getting to that championship hopes. I think Wyoming's going to be a challenge, and I mean, we looked at Boise. There, you can't ever write them off, but I mean, they didn't score a touchdown all game, and they gave up 38 points.
Southwick looked terrible.
Here's the thing: we talked about Boise having such a tough road because their out of division schedule in the Mountain West is very brutal.
Yep.
They have to go to Fresno. They have to go to San Diego State. They host Nevada,
Although that SDSU game isn't
great.
looking so hard right now.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, it's not going to come easy having to go on the road. I mean, in conference road games against the other elite members of the conference are going to be tough. That's just how it is. And then they have to come to Utah State. USU doesn't have that difficult of a conference schedule outside of having to go to San Jose State and having to host Boise State. So if Boise State, I mean, we thought, maybe there's a chance that even if we beat San Jose and lost to Boise, we could still get a bid in the Mountain West Conference Championship game. That's suddenly looking like it could be a possibility. I mean, and if we just beat both those teams, let's just take care of business and it's done with. But, I mean, all of a sudden you could see the chips fall more in USU's favor than we possibly anticipated before.
I think one of the big things is we are so fortunate to have a lot of the games at home that we do. I mean, we got Boise at home. We have Wyoming at home this year, don't we?
Yes.
I mean, we
don't have to travel to Hawaii.
We don't have to travel
Thank
to, and that's the thing is we have those are going to be the two games for the division, and we've got them both in Romney. They're a little bit. I think that Wyoming game is a little bit later in the year, but we got some good stuff as far as our home schedule goes to really give us that boon.
Yep.
Thanks, San Diego State, for putting on a show. I had to throw that out there. Elise tweets us in, and she says that she was bummed for the day, but now it's on to Air Force. Climb to the Mountain West Championship begins now. Good thoughts. Spencer tweets in. He says, how long till Kyler Fackrell catches the end zone fade for a touchdown?
That was actually a really...
That was an interesting wrinkle.
Interesting thing that got thrown in there.
Well, the thing that's weird to me is he changed his number to 9.
Which is a great number.
It's a great number, but also shared by JoJo Natson. So he and JoJo can't be on the field at the same time.
Technically, they're not even supposed to be able to... If he shows in for offense, they shouldn't be able to report in the game as far as the rules, as I understand them, go. But,
interesting.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's something, who knows what we'll see out of that. I'm telling myself not to look into it too much because we've got some quality offensive weapons that we don't need to go and take one of our star linebackers over there to be like, hey, let's really throw a wrinkle in here.
Well, and I think Fackrell was the first one to admit that he was in there as a distraction to be able to open that fade up for Swindle.
And that's fine.
But
I mean, if that's how it's going to go, great.
But to answer this question, you'll see it in the Weber State game.
Well,
that's my prediction.
Spencer's prediction to match that is in the Coliseum against USC.
Ooh,
That'd be a great place. Totally great place for that. True Aggie fan tweets in again. Second question. Good for him. Has the team done anything to address the cramping issues that they had in the first game?
I have no idea. I imagine, they're probably hydrating. Look, cramps happen. I can't think of a single one outside of Chucky. Was there another?
No, and I think and the fact is people are looking at it this weird abnormality that some freak thing must have happened and something was out of. Let's look at the diet and all this kind of stuff. They go down, and it happens all the time. It's the same thing as regular injuries. You'll watch players all the time going and getting stretched out. So, I don't think that it's anything that needs to be specifically addressed and go, oh, let's make a massive amount of change to try to get things fixed.
T. Wade tweets in with his thoughts. He says that he thinks Air Force is a must-win if we want to win 7 or more games. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
He also says our run defense is our obvious strength. Will it translate into defending Air Force's option as well as we think?
Look, Air Force will still get yards on the run. I mean, there will be drives where we completely shut them down, and then occasionally they'll break off a big run for 20-plus yards. They're still going to get a handful of yards on the ground, probably upwards of at least 250, almost entirely on the ground. They'll throw it a little, and they might complete a few, but I think they'll get some, but our run defense, all in all, should be able to hold them in check enough.
Well, and the important thing is we can't allow them to score off it. And if there's one major thing we can say about our defense as far as what the Utah game showed us is that our goal line rush defense is fantastic.
Yes.
You know, did they have a rush touchdown all day aside from that one? They had the one by Travis Wilson when he ran it in and kind of stretched across the line, just extended the 6'6" frame. But I don't think the running backs had a touchdown. I mean, I think it was a lot of pass stuff.
The running backs did not.
And they had several opportunities. So as long as we can shore up and really keep them contained on that goal line, if that comes up, I mean, personally, I'd rather not have them get anywhere near the goal line. But our defense is solid in the red zone.
Uncle Brian tweets in. He says, "What happened to our day against Utah?" He doesn't think they did so hot.
I mean, the biggest thing is that later in the game, they gave up scores on, I believe, Utah's last 3 drives.
Touchdown, 2 field goals.
The first thing I see there is that it's because our offense couldn't stay on the field in the second half. It was a struggle for them to get yards. Utah's defense made some great adjustments. We had a few plays that just didn't pan out like we needed them to, and our defense was gassed. And when you get in those late game situations against a team with enough offensive weapons like Utah had, they're going to move the ball and they're going to be able to score points. I mean, you got to keep in mind until the onside kick incident, I mean, we had held them to 21 points at that time, mid-third quarter. That's not terrible. I mean, you got to hope the defense will do better in the fourth. It's just they were on the field a ton, and you could see the fatigue.
Tony Wolf tweets in. He says that he's heard that Air Force's starting quarterback hurt his knee. Do we have any info on that?
I do not. I know their backup came in and played a little, but it was also a blowout game.
Matt Wells' press conference today said they're scouting for both players, but apparently the news is not good for the starter out there. So I think we can almost anticipate for sure seeing backup QB in for the game. The big thing with Air Force is I don't know if that really actually makes much of a difference to their offensive attack. So, I mean, it's going to be the option attack. If the backup isn't in sync with his running backs, it could make a bit of a difference. But, honestly, it's not. The fact is you're not watching a guy come in chucking 40 passes and needing him to be accurate.
We had a bunch of questions about the safeties and the defense against the passing game. So we're going to sum them all up in a question submitted by Brett Brinkerhoff. He says, the way our safeties played versus Utah, they'll be okay against Air Force, but how do we fix the issues versus teams that actually pass?
Got to get better. I mean, we talked earlier about the possibility of putting Tay Glover right at free safety, and if the problem persists, that's an option, but you got to get better. This is Mo Alexander's first game as a safety. He was a linebacker his career up until now. And, like we also said, Utah's a very good passing team. They have a good passing quarterback, great tight ends, and very, very good wide receivers. So it's not going to be easy for most teams to stop their passing game. And I will agree our safeties seem to get exposed more than they should have. But it's one of those things where the coaching staff obviously is going to recognize this. We have a very good cornerbacks coach in Kendrick Shaver, and Todd Orlando is over the safeties. So I think they're going to be very active in that. They're going to be breaking down film and showing these guys, here's where things went wrong. Here's what the read you should have made is. Here's what you did. Let's go out and practice and fix this.
Well, I think Matt Wells actually had, you got to trust what the coaches are saying. And he said that the thing that they caught out is they broke eye contact with where they're supposed to be. Their attention went to somewhere else where it wasn't supposed to be. I think they are teachable mistakes to fix.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to sum up with that too, because I think you don't know that you have a problem. You have a weakness right now. And until that's exploited again, it's a fixable thing right now, and until we face a team like a San Jose, like we talked about, that will be the true test of whether this problem has been corrected, or if you really do have an issue that maybe you need to start moving people around. Thanks everyone for tweeting in your questions as always. Our favorite moment of the show. Please tweet us anytime at USU Front Row. Interact with us on Twitter. That's where you'll find us most often. Thanks as always, and send those questions all the time. To wrap up this episode of the Front Row Show, we're going to go around and share our last words for this week. Matt, start us off.
My last words is simple. Don't give up on this team. It's one loss. We're Utah State fans. We were so used to losing games before, and it's so rare for us now, and by so few points. We lost a game. The season's not over. We still have a championship to play for. We still have a lot of exciting moments. Stay tuned.
My last thoughts, I actually have two of them. The first one's going to go out and say that obviously this was Coach Wells' audition piece for his first coaching game. And though we didn't come away with the victory, I think he made some brilliant moves. He kept his head on towards the end of the game. I think there were some things that he showed us that, especially as time goes on, our team's in the right hands as far as football goes. My second thought is the basketball forum on USU fans has been really slow lately.
Whoa!
And I think that is wonderful. Okay? The fact is I am stoked for this year for basketball. Really stoked for this year for basketball. But we've got football news happening enough to keep us off it. And I remember years ago when first loss had happened of the year and instantly people start analyzing what's going to go on in basketball season. We don't need to worry about that anymore. So well done, Aggie fans. Keep it up. Keep football in mind. And hey, you can look forward to a really great basketball season coming up.
My last words for tonight are believe the hype. Believe that this is a really, really good football team with the potential to go to a very, very good bowl game, the potential to win the Mountain West, to achieve things that Utah State has never achieved in football. This team can do it. Believe the hype. You have a quarterback who is unreal. The defense is going to get better. Those issues will be solved. Believe, Aggie fans. Come out to the games, get loud, and become everything that you've always wanted to become with your football team.
Yeah, get your arms around them.
Oh,
Arms
yeah.
around.
Arms around, baby.
Well done. Well, this has been a great episode of the Front Row Show. We've been able to recap the Utah game. We've put that to bed now. Now it's about the Mountain West. We look forward to the Air Force game and talking about that next week. As always, make sure you tweet at us at USU Front Row. Interact with us on Facebook, YouTube. Visit usufrontrow.com for great articles and insights that are on there. And we look forward to more great football games. For the Front Row Show, I'm Jeff Browning.
I'm Lance Rasmussen.
And I'm Matt Sonnenberg. Go Aggies! Next up for our next segment, I don't want to redo that. I don't want to have next is the word.
Double next.
Hey, Aggie fans, thanks again for listening to this episode of The Front Row Show. Be sure to download all our archived episodes on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at USU Front Row. Like our page on Facebook at facebook.com/USU Front Row. And subscribe to us on our new YouTube channel at youtube.com/USU Front Row. Go Aggies.